Okay, well, let me welcome you to our Pro Spotlight. My name is Casey Taylor. I'm a customer training specialist here at JobTread, and I am your host for these Pro Spotlights. And so, for any of you who have joined and don't actually know what a Pro Spotlight is, essentially, this is our opportunity typically to introduce you to some of our incredible breakout session presenters from our annual Connect conference in January, which I will share a link for our upcoming Connect conference in January of 2026. But some of our presenters from 2025 have been coming on and giving you the opportunity to hear what their presentations were. For any that didn't get to come to the Connect conference, you have a chance to hear from them here on the Pro Spotlight. And today, we haven't technically deviated from that because Anna also presented at this past year's Connect conference, but we have asked her to come back and share some of her wisdom as we ask our other presenters. Because what makes this community so special is your willingness to share the things that you've learned as we share with you. Our training team tries and educates you. Your customer success managers partner with you. We also have an incredible ecosystem of users who have been more than willing and happy to share with each other through things like our JobTread Pros Facebook group, through things like the Pro Spotlight. And then just through phone calls and relationships, we think that that's what makes JobTread the best construction management solution and software on the market, bar none. It's this community, it's the willingness to share. And so we have created this Pro Spotlight as a platform for that to happen in sort of mass, right? For anybody who didn't get to come to our Connect conference. And so typically, again, we've used these to highlight primarily users. But today we have the distinct pleasure of having a special guest on the Pro Spotlight. You might know her, and maybe I'm the only one that calls her this, but she's Miss JobTread, okay? Dr. Anna Hunter is the Director of Learning and Development here at JobTread Software from Dallas, Texas, by way of Minnesota, I might add. And she has been with JobTread since 2021 after Eric, our CEO's many attempts to lure her into his new opportunity at this little company called JobTread. And for the last months, guys, she's also been my boss. Okay. And so I'm excited to have her here. She can be found all over our help desk, recorded trainings, our product updates, YouTube channel, or one of our many in-person boot camps, conferences, events. She's everywhere. And today she is here with you. And so we're pumped for you to have an opportunity to hear from Anna and to glean wisdom that she's accumulated through years of helping contractors just like you, not only with the software, but with your businesses as well. We have so many conversations about things that you're learning, that you're teaching us. And so before we turn it over to her and let her get into her presentation, let me just go ahead and set some ground rules so that we're all on the same page about what today's going to look like. You're going to want to ask her a ton of questions, and that's awesome. You're also going to have some comments. You're going to say, oh my gosh, Hannah, hey, we think you're so great. And those types of comments, all of the sort of commentary or the, virtual high fives, those are going to go in our webinar chat where you told me where you were joining us from. Put those comments, that reflection on what she's teaching in there. Okay. Or if she asks you a question, that's where you're going to put that. However, if you have a question for Anna, we are going to hold a Q&A time at the end. And so if you can go ahead and share those questions to the Q&A, you're going to want to put those there, and then I will hold them up and we will give them to Anna. I'll moderate those, and then she'll be able to answer those at the end. Okay. So essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to her. Her topic today and her talk is going to be process mapping to optimize your workflow. And so, ladies and gentlemen, give a warm JobTread welcome to my boss, your favorite, today's Pro Spotlight guest, our presenter, Dr. Anna Hunter.
Thank you so much, Casey. So I can hear all the applause. It's like I was brought on stage. He really kind of introduced me so well. Well, yes, my name is Dr. Anna Hunter. I have a background in education. I also grew up on construction sites, and so this dual kind of background really positions me well to help guide you all as you're bringing JobTread into your construction businesses. And with my background in education, I have focused very heavily on organizational development and change management. And so, as part of that, we really have to start to put our thinking caps on and making sure that we are optimizing our businesses and not just adding a software to try to hope that it helps solve our problems. So, let's dig into the roots of it. But where I thank you for the applause. Where I really like to start, though, is to reflect a little bit. We have to think of processes not just in our business life, but in our personal lives. And that's how it brings it all together. So I want to start with reflection. So find your emojis or find that chat and send me an emoji or raise your hand or whatever kind of reaction you want to do here on Zoom. But I'm going to read off a series of statements, and I want you to tell me if these statements resonate with you. So the first statement is, there never seems to be enough hours in the day. Go ahead, let us know if that connects with you. All right. Yep. All right. The next one, I feel like I'm always putting out fires instead of staying ahead. Oh, yeah. I say yes to things and then I regret it because I'm already stretched too thin. I'm constantly rushing and I still end up late. And the last one, probably the most heavy one, I've disappointed people I care about because I've dropped the ball. Yeah. Now I see a ton of emojis, tons of hands, tons of reactions, and I get it. You know, those feelings of overwhelm, guilt, running behind, they are all real. And the truth is, most of the time, it's not because we aren't capable of this or that we're not working hard enough, but it's actually because of the way that our workflows are set up and they are typically working against us. So this kind of reminds me of a story of my husband. Yep, my husband. Let's meet Sean. So Sean is probably one of the most, I guess, routine focused, action driven, efficiency loving people that I know. And especially when it comes to his morning coffee. And even though it is instant coffee, we're not going to judge him too bad on that one. But when we first moved into our new house, his routine suddenly wasn't working for him. And it really started to drive him nuts. So the truth of the matter is that I set up the kitchen when we moved into the new house, and I didn't have his routine in mind when I set up that kitchen. So therefore, his routine was starting to work against him. So as a result of this, Sean kind of felt like he was doing a shuttle run every morning as he was trying to get ready for his day. So he runs on routine. He's obsessed with efficiency. He's powered by coffee. So again, this all just started to amount and drive him nuts. So he decided to pull me aside one day and ask if we could change some things. Well, the first thing that we did to try to make those changes is we listed out all of the steps that he takes in the morning. So this is really helpful. Get it all down on paper, out of your head, on paper. But then what we did is we organized all of his steps into something more like a flow chart. And this is where we truly started to get a feel for his morning journey. But then where we truly discovered the gravity of the problem was taking it a step further and mapping out his steps through our house. Yes, I followed him around and we mapped out where he went in our house for every single thing he did in the morning. Now, at this point, we couldn't deny that there was a problem. And eventually, after analyzing everything, we were able to cut down his morning routine by 18 minutes every single morning. That is several hours every month. And we could reduce the redundancies. So the orange map here is what we originally started with. And then we ended up changing things and we didn't remove any steps. We just reorganized things. We adjusted those steps and we moved some things around the house so that we could find a better solution for him. Yeah, coffee pot and dog food in the bedroom. That's about it. Yeah. So this is the starting of this process mapping experience. Now, you can do this in your own personal lives, but then also it can translate to work life. So it's really important that we start to kind of feel like our everyday is a process and it can all be optimized and approved or improved. So the first step is to really reflect on your current workflows. Ineffective workflows result in the overuse of resources, and resources are people, time, and money. If you don't have effective workflows, then one of those three or multiple of those three will be compromised. Also, they can result in miscommunications, inaccurate reporting, and tons of headaches. So what happens is we tend to throw money at these problems. Maybe we add more staff or we invest in some software tools just to try to solve the problems, especially in our business. But I really hate to break it to you. These will just add to the problems if you're not solving the root of the issue, and that is within your business, discovering those inefficient processes. Now, I work at JobTread. I wish I could tell you that JobTread will solve all your problems, but that's actually not the case. It's the people behind the software and the processes behind the software that we have to get in order before we can have a software truly support our existing workflows. So essentially, we need to streamline our processes first and then add the additional staff and good software like JobTread to support our solid workflows. Now, I would love for you all to think of a basic workflow that you typically do on a frequent basis. So think of what that workflow might be, and I encourage you to think about your workflow at work. So what is something that you do in your job almost every day or multiple times a week that it's kind of a frequent basis? Now pull out a pen and paper or have a Word doc open and list 5 steps that you take within that workflow. I'm going to give us just a couple minutes to list out 5 of those steps, kind of like what I did with Sean's morning routine. Hopefully you've got a couple things on your list. Yeah, I see Morgan has a really great list going there in the chat already. Feel free to write the list wherever you want to. You can add it to the chat if you want, or you could just put it in a notes app or write it on a pad of paper. Either way works. Okay, so that should come pretty naturally to you. You do it frequently, so listing 5 steps isn't challenging. Well, that's the first part of this. So now we can take this list and we can create a process map. And process maps are used to visually display what happens in that process. So we're going to want to include high-level primary steps and then also include some of those sub-steps within our processes. It's also helpful that we identify any handoffs where information or something is traveling between people. And then we want to make sure that we include feedback loops. Feedback loops are essentially when we return to the same step again. And so often in the construction world, we have tons of feedback loops, and that's typically, when the customer asks for something to be changed on a proposal. Well, now we're bringing it back into our process again. We're revisiting a step. We have to account for all of those things because that is technically part of the process, and sometimes those are the biggest problems. All right. So the purpose of process mapping is to understand all aspects of the process, and then we can dig into the root cause of the issues that might be affecting its effectiveness. And so I like to think of it as taking a magnifying glass to a process, or even just getting what's in your head out of your head and on paper or somewhere. So there are 5 main steps for process improvement. First and foremost, we have to identify the big picture workflows. What are the inputs? What's the information or data that's coming into our process? What are the outputs? What is the information and data that's coming out of our process? and identifying what the process is itself. So the process could be handled, let's say in JobTread, but you have data coming into JobTread and you want a certain output out of it. So there's three parts of a system: that's input, process, output. We want to identify those on a big picture scale. Next, we go into outlining our detailed workflows, so the inner workings of the process. Forget the inputs and outputs. Let's dig into what the process is itself, and is it developing the output that we're looking for? Next, we need to do an analysis, identifying gaps, redundancies, any bottlenecks or inefficiencies that are a part of our process. And then we get to ask ourselves some questions. And we want to ask the questions from both an internal lens, so looking from, let's say, an employee standpoint or even just our role. And then we also want to look at our process from an external lens. How do your subcontractors feel about your process? Do they think that you have a messy process? Well, then that's something to be mindful of, especially if your customers are thinking that your process is pretty messy. Well, those are really important perspectives to consider as you're optimizing your processes. And then finally, we can implement changes after that point. So let's apply these steps to our work life by exploring, let's say, a job life cycle. So we might have 4 parts of a job, and those would be kind of more the macro level, big picture components of a job. First, we may have pre-sales, and then we could have our estimating phase, our execution phase, and then billing and closeout. Oop, here they are. Okay, so this is helpful. This is just breaking a job down into its macro level parts. All right, now this is a good start, but we can actually go a little bit deeper to make it valuable for us, because this isn't going to help us identify any of those issues that we were experiencing. So let's drill down a little bit further and zoom into each phase individually. So within our pre-sales process, we can create our own map. So we zoomed into pre-sales. Now we have those primary steps within the pre-sales process. And then we can add our sub-steps within the process as well. So here, I do want to point out one quick unique part about this pre-sales map. You're going to notice within the lead capture portion, we get inbound phone calls, we get emails, and we also get some from the web lead capture form. However, when we do have a phone call or an email, I also want to push them to the web lead capture form so that we don't have this back and forth email exchange. The web lead capture form is going to collect everything we need from that customer to move forward. So therefore, I want to always push everything to it. Well, if I just have those three options, web lead capture form, phone call, email, listed linearly, that's not showing this unique portion of our process where we push everyone to that web lead capture form. So this is a really great example of how we can have some very unique visual depictions of how our business runs. All right. Then also, if you use software tools within your business, and hopefully JobTread is one of them, or if it's not, it could become one of them once you get your processes mapped out. I think it's always helpful to include where those software tools fit within the process. This is incredibly helpful for you to make sense of the purpose of those software tools, but also to communicate that to your team. So here you might see that for the marketing portion, we may use Go High Level. And then maybe for all of the lead capture, lead communication, site visit, we're using JobTread for those pieces. And then maybe we have a design tool that we use for the design phase, and then we are headed back into JobTread. And of course, with JobTread, the open API, you can link up a lot of these tools, but again, it's really important to know where your process is moving through the different software tools. All right, I also like to add the person or people that are in charge of each of the steps so that we can clearly see the handoffs. So feel free to add, your team members' photos or something to this process map so that we can then see, okay, who is in charge of what, And where is information traveling? Because traveling information could result in inefficiencies and also errors. So that's really important to keep in mind. Okay, now let's check out the next phase of the job. We have our estimating phase. Here in our estimating phase, once again, I have the macro level steps for this portion of the job, and then I can add my sub steps in once again. And then notice I'm also including a feedback loop here. So we can create the proposal, we send the proposal to our lead, we follow up for a signature, and maybe that lead says, hey, we want to actually increase the scope of the project or decrease the scope of the project. Well, now you're back to the drawing board. So we have to edit the proposal and resend it to them. So now we're heading back in time to our other steps, and we're going to then follow the process again. So again, those feedback loops are really important to include because this entire edit, proposal, and resend could be a huge crux in your process, and you need to identify where that's happening. All right, so then of course we can also add any additional pieces to this, such as the software that we're using for each of these phases. Of course, JobTread can handle your entire estimating process, so I put JobTread in all of these stages, but then additionally, we can put our point people in here. Now you're gonna notice something here. I have a different person that's handling the proposal edits and resend, because maybe they're the ones that are following up for that signature, but perhaps it should be the person who created the original proposal. Those are good things, again, to note. And as you're building your process map, you're going to have a ton of those thoughts come to your head like, this actually could be a lot more efficient. Wait, don't change up your processes yet. We are building our process map to reflect our current workflows, the inefficient workflows. Then we can optimize it and rebuild our process maps for our ideal workflows. Okay, let's head to that next section. Now we have our execution map. Here you see the macro level steps, the sub steps, and then we also have our software listed. Here you'll notice I'm including QuickBooks in here as well, because again, it's important for me and my team to know what software tools we're using for each phase, including that accounting software. And then once again, we have our people that we are adding. All right, this helps us understand all the cooks in the kitchen. Perfect. And then finally, our billing and closeout map. Here is the final map that I created for this one. It has the macro steps, micro steps, as well as the software and the people. You'll see I even incorporated Stripe to collect the payments, and then I also have Nice Job included in there to request those customer reviews. So again, all the software is really important to include in here. Oh, and maybe I use Google Drive to archive all my project files. So might as well throw that in there as well. Even the seemingly small software tools, really important to include. Okay. So let me put or kind of get a pulse for all of you in the audience. Go ahead and enter in the chat if this is clicking for you. Scale of 1 to 5. 1 being you feel very overwhelmed by this process. 5 being you feel really confident and you're excited to get started. Okay, 1 million. We run the gamut on these numbers. That's helpful to know. Well, just remember, let me simplify this down real quick. So again, you're starting with a list. Just list everything that you do for a process. You have to pick a process that's tangible, right? So choose the process, list everything within that process. Then you can put it in something like this, because you're going to notice within your list, you're going to have some primary steps or categories of steps, and then those are going to go across the top, and then you can put the sub steps beneath. I have seen some process maps from some JobTread users that are gigantic. They have hundreds and hundreds of steps in there, but they are so excited and proud to show me their process map because they realize that it did really help them, and they go back to it often with their team. I will also say that if you create your process map and you're able to share that with your customer success manager, it's going to really help your success manager to know where you want JobTread to support your business, and then you can curate JobTread to have it meet your needs and help you be successful. So very, very helpful. Okay, so all we did is create a list, put it in a flowchart format. Now we get to start dissecting our maps. Okay, so once we have our maps, we need to start analyzing them. First thing that we need to do is work smarter. So we need to identify any steps that can be combined, any steps that are running concurrently or that could be running concurrently, any steps that are automated, that could be automated or faster, and any that could be simplified. What are these obvious things that we're noticing when we first look at our map? And then, of course, we want to note anything that could be reduced or eliminated. That could include duplicate information. If you are entering information in more than one place, then you're not using your time wisely. Find the system that you want to use that will be your source of truth and stick with it. I've seen a lot of JobTread users who start using JobTread and then they keep their Excel spreadsheet on the side just in case. Don't ever do that because, first of all, you're going to have your team question where the source of truth is, and then your team is going to question whether or not they should be using JobTread. So you're going to completely eliminate team adoption if you're trying to balance having a backup in addition to JobTread. We are never going to hold your data hostage. You can always export it at any time. In fact, we'll help you export it if you want to. But if you're duplicating information, you're also duplicating the time spent to enter that information. Even though it's seemingly small, it does add up. Next, reduce and eliminate any handoffs that you can. When I do a task or I have a portion of a process, I'm going to complete my portion. Then I go ahead and send it to somebody else. Well, it's going to sit on their priority list, and then it could be a couple days until it makes the top of their priority list. So now we have a delay in accomplishing what we need to. And then next, approval tiers. Don't get me started with approval tiers. If you have multiple people approving a step or approving a document, for example, what approval really matters? Can anyone tell me? The final one, thank you. Yes, the final approval is the only one that matters. And so what I would recommend is instead of having a sequence of approvals, we might think, oh, everybody just needs their eyes on it though. Everybody needs to see it. Everyone needs to check it off. Okay, that's fine. In JobTread, you can have multiple people added to a document to view it simultaneously and to give their thumbs up simultaneously and then have the final approval then. So I would highly recommend using the tools that you have available to you so you can have approvals happen at the same time rather than having to go up an approval chain because that takes a very, very long time. Also in JobTread, you can see when people view the document. So they don't even need to give you a thumbs up. You can go in there and look at everyone who has access to that document and see exactly when they saw that document. And then you can assume that people had eyes on it or moving forward. So I highly suggest assessing those approval tiers and ask if they're really necessary. Okay, the next step is cutting our resources. So we can find places within our process that we can cut down on our people, time, or money, right? So look for any prevention steps. These are steps that were just added because something less than ideal happened once before, and now we're scared, and we added an entire step or process to prevent this from happening in the future. I know many of you are nodding your heads and kind of chuckling right now. Yeah. If maybe a minor fire happened on a job site in the past, okay. Do we have to create an entire process or an entire series of steps in our process to prevent that in the future? Maybe not. Maybe instead we could focus on training our employees in a different way. Or maybe we can include a check or a balance at some point, but we don't necessarily need to add an entire series of steps for something just because we're scared it might happen again. Of course, if it's going to cost your company money, then reassess, but I highly suggest really being critical with this one. Also, appraisal steps. These are steps where we're spending time assessing or evaluating something. Hopefully, you can have appraisal happen at the same time as something else, so we're still moving the process forward during that assessment or evaluation. And then try to eliminate reports that no one reads. So as soon as you print a report, it is outdated. Hate to tell you, all that time you spent on building out a report, it's outdated the immediate time that you print it. And now it's sitting on someone's desk and it gets even more outdated. So in our fast-paced construction industry, we need to have reports that are live, that have real-time insights, that are not outdated, and that would be the reports that you can create in JobTread. So you have your custom views in many tools in JobTread. You also have your report dashboard. And so you leverage those, build your live reports in JobTread so you don't have to print another one or prepare another one. You can truly customize those to be the live reports that you need. And then also, we often get stuck in old processes because we have steps that are based on tradition and not progress. If you have a step that is there because it's always been there, or because that's the way we've always done it, then that's a great time to rethink that step. Okay? We need to clearly see the difference between what we think the process should be versus what it could be to reach an even better outcome. So the first step is challenging the outcome. Is this the best we can deliver? What would really make us stand out among other contractors? Challenge what's coming out of that process. Also challenge the input. Are we getting the right information into JobTread or into the process in the beginning? Maybe we need to ask more qualifying questions of our new leads during the pre-sales phase. Okay, well, that would help then get more data and insights into JobTread, and then we can use that for something. So think about what is the quality of information that you are having put into JobTread, and that is going to determine the quality of information or benefit you get out of JobTread. And then also think about what might happen if we eliminate any of those macro or micro steps. That's scary, but really think about it. Would, we cause a flood on the job site? Maybe not. And so maybe it's okay to have that thought. And if it's not possible, then just move on, and that's okay. But it could be possible to eliminate an entire section, and just think of the worst case scenario. Now, the most difficult part of process mapping is asking those tough questions. Sometimes people feel attached to a process, especially if they're the ones that built it. Just think, if you built something and now people are coming in and criticizing it or critiquing it, it's going to feel icky. And so I highly recommend being very mindful and empathetic when you're having these conversations. In order for process mapping to be effective, though, you do need buy-in from everyone on the team, everyone externally, anyone involved in that process. So let's talk a little bit about how to get buy-in. I like to use the 4 C's when I'm preparing my team for change and getting them on board. Sorry, Casey, you're going to hear a little bit of my secret here. So the first C is clarity. Give clarity of the system consequence. So help people to see the cause and effect relationship of the failed system. Explain, this is what we're currently doing, and this is the result that we're getting. And that's not helping us scale. That's not helping us grow. If you provide that clarity, then it's really hard for people to say, no, that's not the case, right? So just state the obvious, state what's happening. Next, we need consensus. So that consensus is going to be an agreement of priorities of the problem at hand. You can ask your team, okay, given that this is the cause, this is the effect, do I have you all on board for making it a priority to solve this? I don't know how we're going to solve it yet, but are you on board with making it a priority? Great, okay. And then next, commitment to resolve that problem. So Will you all help me out? Easy peasy. And again, you don't have to have the answers. You don't have to know exactly how you're going to solve this problem yet, but getting them involved in the beginning is going to be incredibly helpful. Then we have the contribution to the solution. You can ask them to help you out. Can you go research some options that we have here? Or I noticed that this is an inefficiency and it's in your area. Could you dissect that for me? The leader or the owner does not have to be the one that solves all these problems. In fact, you're going to get greater adoption and buy-in if you have your team solve the problems and come up with solutions themselves. So going through these 4 C's without having all the answers yet is incredibly helpful, and I'd say it's never too early to start these conversations. Process mapping also doesn't have to be overwhelming or stuffy or fancy in any way. Since it's just a visual depiction of what happens in your process, you can get creative with it. In fact, many of us are very tactile learners, especially in the construction industry. So the more interactive, the better. So here are some examples of different process maps that I've created. Of course, I can make them all nice and pretty on the computer, and maybe that's what you want to do after the activity, but I've used butcher block paper and Post-it notes on the far right and the far left ones. Those are for process timelines, and that's really helpful if you're kind of gauging a process over a length of time. And each Post-it note color could represent a different person, could represent a different department, or a different phase of the process. So it could be extremely helpful to see this along a timeline format. Another one could be process steps. So that would be more like using a board game, for example. So here I have the game of life with, again, those little sticky notes. And so we mapped out an entire onboarding process using the game of life, or even Candyland is a good option as well, because in either of those board games, you also have alternative paths. And so it's really helpful if there's like shortcuts as examples, because then you can kind of find how those shortcuts actually work in your process. So that's really helpful. It also can depict feedback loops. And then another one that I really loved, and this was for a group that, again, were very hands-on learners. They wanted tactile kind of team building. And so we used Legos, and everybody built their own office out of Legos. And then we laid out all of their offices. And then we used Post-its and tape to just show where the handoffs were going. This is a crazy process that we were able to map out, and we could simplify so much more just by transferring control of that process to 1 or 2 people rather than 5. And so that one's really fun if you're really wanting to dig into the handoff portion. Now, I know that some of you might be thinking, this all sounds great, but process mapping takes time, and I already don't have enough of that. But you're right, it does take time. And here's the truth, though. The investment pays off far beyond just making your workflows smoother. Process maps can double as training tools for new hires. In fact, if you present your process map to a new hire, they can onboard more than 30% faster than any other employee. That also improves communication across your team. So you can make sure that everyone's on the same page of where you are in the process and how you're going to move through the process, what software tools you're going to use, who's involved. It's a very awesome clarity tool. They can also serve as guides that you can share internally or even with partners. And they can help you especially justify any complexity when you need buy-in. So if you're ever feeling like, gosh, I need this other leader of mine, or I need my employees or anyone to buy into making some change, we'll map the process first. That's going to make the complexity or the issues very visually appealing to solve. So it can really provide a lot of justification, and it can create some alignment that keeps everybody moving in the same direction. So yes, in general, this is an undertaking, but it's also one of the most powerful ways to reclaim your time, reduce stress, and give yourself and your team a lot of clarity. And that brings me back to why this matters. So when we started, I asked you to raise your hand if you ever felt overwhelmed, stretched too thin, or like you are letting someone down because you just couldn't keep up. Well, those feelings are real and they are heavy, but they're also signals that something probably needs to change. And I would love to say that JobTread could be the sole change for that. However, JobTread can't fix your processes. We want to support your strong processes. So the truth is, we don't get more hours in the day, but we can reclaim our time by being intentional about the way that our work flows. So process mapping isn't just about drawing boxes and arrows, having fun on game boards. It is about creating clarity where there's chaos, and also giving your team confidence and giving yourself back the time and the energy to focus on what matters most. So as we close out here, I want you to remember this. When you map your processes, you're not just fixing your workflows, you're reclaiming your time in life and work. So I'd love to continue the conversation. Stick around to ask questions. And also, I do have a free resource online. It's an 8-page process playbook. It's an ebook for you. And this is completely free. Go ahead and scan that QR code. I believe Casey can put the link in the chat for you as well. And when you end up landing on that page, you will see that there's a little form to fill out. Well, if you're a current JobTread customer, this form isn't really going to mean much. So just fill it out to get the playbook. If you are not a JobTread customer, this form is going to tell us that you might be interested in continuing the conversation about process mapping. And so by filling this out, then we can definitely reach out to you and continue that conversation as well. But I'd like to get this in your hands. It has tons of resources for you, and it walks through the entire process of process mapping. So yes, so thank you all so much for attending today. And I'm just going to open the floor for questions at this point. So let us know if you have any questions.
All right. Everybody give her a round of applause, a little bit of a clap, a virtual clap. Anna, thank you so much. This was really interesting. I feel like one of the things as we train people that we figure out is that people are overwhelmed by the software, not even because the software is overwhelming, but because they don't really know what their processes are. They haven't thought, it's like the slide that you gave. If we can't explain the process, how on earth are we actually going to implement things where other people can follow our processes? And so make sure that you guys watch this again. Go back and find the link tomorrow, and then make sure that you are internalizing the concepts and then build out your own process map. And so I'm excited for you guys to get to implement a lot of this stuff. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at some of the questions. We had a lot of questions because we know if you've watched any of our trainings, a lot of the slides that we create, a lot of the diagrams and things that we have on those trainings were created by my boss, Dr. Anna Hunter. And so we had a lot of questions, including Christina and then Vance, who all asked, can you make flow charts in JT, or are those imported in? And I know the answer to that, but I'll let you go ahead and answer that one.
Yeah. Good question. So within the process playbook that you all have access to here, I do list out digital tools and just manual tools that you can use for mapping your processes. Within JobTread itself, there's not a specific tool for mapping your processes. However, there are so many tools out there. I mean, one of the most basic ones is PowerPoint or Google Slides. They have a flowchart tool or a diagram tool that you can use for that. Additionally, I really am partial to using Lucidchart. They have a free version, and you can build out those process maps. That's what I use. So Lucidchart is really great. Visio is a more advanced one. So if you're wanting to get a bit more advanced with yours and you want to make these gigantic process maps, then Visio could be a great option. But there are several, and so I do have several listed on that process playbook, so make sure that you download that, and that's going to give you a ton more insight there.
Yeah, so if it gets buried, I'm going to go ahead and put it in there. I've already put it in there once, but I'm going to go ahead and just kind of keep tossing that link in there for you guys to be able to access that process playbook. So we did have another question, what programs are you using? So I feel like she did a good job of answering that. We did have some suggestions about Canva and Whimsical, so you might consider those.
Yeah.
Morgan asked, she said, well, it's a statement, so maybe you can make a comment on this. She said the issue that I'm running into is that I'm unsure what tools that I can even use as an IDE to create workflows. And again, I think this is kind of the same thing, in terms of Morgan. You can kind of clarify if you have a little bit more of a question, but I'm gathering as I read through it again that you are asking about what tools to create just the visual diagrams for these. I think she said she used Microsoft Visual Code as well.
Ooh, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah. So
That's
again,
great.
check out the process playbook. I feel like you guys are going to have a lot of really great resources as you do, and obviously you'll have another opportunity to learn from them
Yeah, and
all.
Casey, I'll expand on that a little bit.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a fancy tool. Don't even start on the computer. On all those processes that I built out, and those are just simplified processes, right? But on all of those, I did not start on the computer. I started on a whiteboard and I used post-it notes and dry erase markers because I needed the ability to move it around, to touch it, to feel it. And so I actually discourage starting building your processes on the computer. I think it has to be a tactical, tangible process because that's what gets it out of your head and puts it on paper so you can actually manipulate it and adjust it. You can't manipulate anything in your head. You can kind of do it on the computer, but when it's actually something tactile, start there. Then when you feel good about it, put it on a computer system or draw it and then you can scan it in, whatever you need to do. But don't make it complicated. Don't feel like you need a precursor to be able to do this.
Yeah. And Vaughn's question was kind of about the ecosystem. I think he's also, again, maybe asking a little bit about how we could replicate some of this process mapping within JobTread. And I'll let you speak to this, but it was never our intention to conquer every problem in your entire workflow. So I'll let you speak to that just a little
Yeah.
bit, that
Yeah.
ecosystem.
Oh gosh. Yeah. We get asked a lot of different features and different tools. And so one of our founder and CEO, Eric Fortenberry, not Casey, I know he's labeled as that, but Eric Fortenberry has uh, really started from the beginning. In fact, one of our values is don't boil the ocean. Like let's pick the things that we want to focus on and do them really, really well. If we try to conquer everything, then all of your tools are going to be very surface level and they're not going to be as powerful as you need them to be. So that's why we have an open API. That's why you can, connect JobTread to other software programs is because we know that there are other programs that focus on certain things like accounting. We don't have to get into accounting. There are some great accounting programs out there, and one of them is QuickBooks. And so we're able to integrate with those other systems that do it really, really well. So we try not to boil the ocean. I will also say that we need to stay in a lane at some point, and I don't know that process mapping is going to be a part of that lane because process maps are not always used during the construction process. They are used for planning. And
Mhm.
so since there are some other great tools out there, use those. Now, I will say, if you really wanted to get creative in JobTread, you could create just a blank or have a blank PDF added to your plans tab and process map with markup. You could do that. I'm not going to recommend it though, because it's not the best tool to use for that. So definitely use the process mapping tools or just pen and paper and leave JobTread to managing your construction projects.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of throw this your way because I do know that there will be some things, and this is why workflow automations are there, that we will be able to within our process, sort of
Oh, yeah.
trigger some of the things to automate. So do you want to speak to that a little bit? I know we have plenty
Yes,
of
I love
trainings.
that. Thanks for circling back on that, Casey. So, we do have the new workflows tool out, and that workflow tool does allow you to kind of create this is a trigger, and this is what should happen as a result of that trigger. It kind of looks and feels like a process map. Now, I don't suggest going in and starting to build workflows to replicate the process mapping process. You need to create your process maps first And then that's going to illuminate the places where you could leverage workflows in JobTread to simplify repeated tasks, right? So workflows in JobTread are used to make repeated tasks easy because it can automate those repetitive tasks, but it's not going to be used for your entire process mapping experience. Yeah, but process maps will help you know what you want to build for your workflows.
Yeah.
Great.
And then let's see. So Gretchen actually asked a great question about some of our integration partners, and I'm not aware of this. So Anna, you'll have to excuse me that I don't know the answer to this. But do we have any integration partners who are helping out with some of that process mapping? Do we know that we have
Yeah,
any?
yes, you bet. So let's just pop right here into our, um, let's go into JobTread. I'm going to find, not that one. We're going to go to Big Ranch here. Okay, so here if I go into the marketplace, you're going to notice that you can filter by category. So I'm just in settings in that marketplace tab. Find the category that is for business coaching. Now, most of these business coaches, they definitely will process map with you first, just so they can understand how your process runs. And so all of them are very familiar with process mapping. In fact, many of them have process map models out there. But one of the first things that you will do when working with a business coach is mapping some of your processes so they can understand how your business flows. There's also, I'll also mention, we have implementation partners as well, and many of these implementation partners will help to map your processes to know what tools in JobTread should be supporting you. You are not going to use all of the JobTread tools. It's not expected of you to use all the JobTread tools and features.
Say that again for the people in the back.
Do not plan to use all the JobTread tools and features. Use the ones that make sense for you and your business, and you're not going to know which ones make sense for you until you figure out your own business, right? So map your processes, know your business needs, and then the JobTread features and tools that you need will support that. But there will definitely be tools that you will not be using in JobTread, and that's okay. It's still worth the low cost per month.
Absolutely. It's funny, and I'm sure you could, speak more to this, but the amount of people who I think get overwhelmed with all of the possibilities within the software who aren't realizing, like, I don't actually need any of these tools to do what I currently do. That takes process mapping. You've got to understand what your process is so that you can know what is good for you and what's not good for you. If I have a car and then somebody said, "Hey, I can fix your motorcycle for free." I don't have a motorcycle, so I don't need to go buy a motorcycle so I can get free motorcycle repair. I don't need to worry about that. I'd be like, no, go find somebody that has a motorcycle. Not every tool is going to be for you. So, all right, let's see.
Love that analogy. Thank you for that, Casey.
Yeah, sorry, I work
Yeah.
all that's where my head goes. So, yeah, well, I think that's everything. I'm going to answer Yenise, I think that's your name. I'm going to answer your question in the chat because it's very specific to JobTread, just the software. But thank you, Anna, for jumping in here and being willing to share. This is a training that I know she's given a whole lot. She's given this talk because it's such an important part of, I think, anybody's process, pun intended, to understand what your needs are. You've got to have that clear, like, process forward for how your business already works, how you can implement software, and then an ecosystem around your processes. A lot of people want us to tell you what to do. Some of it is that you need to know how your business needs to work and then allow JobTread to be a tool that helps you achieve what you're trying to accomplish. And so, Anna, thank you so much for sharing. Also, please, I hope that this was all good. Please don't fire me for anything that I might have said. You guys can see that I'm not actually Eric Fortenberry, though he is also got a really nice looking beard in the AV picture over there. But yeah, I jumped in his account, so excuse me there. But anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us. This is an awesome opportunity for you to get to hear from one of our team members who has been so important to JobTread, but also somebody that has a wealth of knowledge to share. And so make sure that you are jumping into our help desk, Make sure that you are learning from the resources that we've created for you. I always tell people the two of the most important things that we have created for people are going to be the relationships within JobTread. So that's your CSMs, your support team, people like us at live events, but then also the resources, the help desk, which Anna has spearheaded with our training team to really revamp. We continue to release new things. She's making update videos and all the things that we've made available to you. Make sure that you're making good use of those because there's a wealth of knowledge available for you to learn. So rather than thinking, I can't get into JobTread until I learn everything, make sure you're doing what you need the software to do. The software is doing for you what you need it to do. And then just kind of commit to learning and then figure out what you can pick up along the way. All right. But again, thank you, Anna. Did you want to throw out anything else before we get everybody out of here?
Yeah, I think that sometimes we can easily get paralyzed by choice and we can have analysis paralysis. And JobTread is such an incredibly flexible tool. And we built it that way because you all run your businesses differently. And so process maps can become that communication tool for you to tell us what you need. So when you meet with your success manager, when you're talking to support, you can tell us and show us, this is what I'm looking to do, and then we can help you get there. Typically, where there's a will, there's a way in JobTread, and we want you to get there. But sometimes it's kind of hard to understand what you're looking for because every business runs differently. So I highly suggest getting your ducks in a row. That really helps us to have our ducks in a row, and then we can support you and make sure that everyone's successful together.
Absolutely. And I do want to say, technically, as I mentioned, Anna was a Connect speaker. So this is my opportunity to tell you that these Pro Spotlights come from our Connect Ed sessions. And so I've put the link in the chat. Check it out. Please come see us here in Dallas at JobTread Connect in January. We would love to see you. You're going to have a chance to get to talk to and meet a lot of the people that you got to see in the chat here today, that you'll see in our JobTread Pros Facebook group, and learn from one another because you're all using the software differently. And again, as you get sort of more of a 360 view of how people are using the software, you're going to find something that really feels like it may work for you. And you're going to learn a ton. And as I said at the beginning, you're also going to develop some really great relationships with people in this community. And that's what makes JobTread special in addition to being a great software. So thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you, Anna, for presenting. We're excited about the direction of the software and we're excited to take you along with us. So please make sure that you're checking back in on these Pro Spotlights every couple weeks. Live in the help desk. If you have feature requests, put them there, Kurt, and just target them to the other people on the training team, just to Rachel and Tim, okay? No, just kidding. But anyway, thank you guys so much. We hope to see you guys on the next Pro Spotlight here in a couple weeks. Have a fantastic rest of your day and a fantastic rest of your week, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.